I wish to call this meeting to order. Mrs. Jasek, if you would please, a roll call.
Mrs. Alehoffen? Here. Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Leister?
Here.
Mrs. Sue Miller? Here. Mr. Hanson?
Here.
Mrs. Grace Miller? Here. Mr. Lansing?
Here. If you would at this time, please take a moment of silence. Mrs. Sue Miller, if you would please lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
About the revocation of pursuit of Public Notice 1924. Yes, sir. Thank you. Agenda, any corrections or deletions for this evening's agenda?
I make a motion to approve. No, hang on one second.
We have a
Second, then
motion,
we'll have
we
this
have a
discussion.
motion, we have a motion to approve, and a second by Mrs. Grace Miller. Comments or discussion, Mr. Hanson?
We've had this discussion before, and it looks as though we need to have it again. I don't see any public comments or concerns on this. I realize this has been deemed a workshop, and you see in parentheses on the top of the page. However, we are having votes and potential action on items tonight, and I would propose that for the email you received earlier today, there's been an ongoing request for public comments at every meeting, especially when we have ongoing business, votes and approval. So my correction would be that this agenda should have had public comments on it, seeing we do have an active vote and active approvals in at least 3 in old business.
I'd also like to point out on this agenda, old business has all items under old business are subject to discussion and or action, but it does not list it under new business. Therefore, it would not be appropriate to vote on any of the things in, depending on this other discussion, but I just want to get this out here that for tonight at least, the new business items, I would advise that you don't vote on them because there is not that qualifier on this, and apologies for not having it on. That was just an oversight.
Good catch, I did note that as well. Mr. Hanson, I'll acknowledge your email from this afternoon where I did reply that this afternoon I replied that I would acknowledge your request for a discussion on having comments and concerns included within the agenda for the 10th of March. I would also, as you indicated in your letter, that you recognized the requirements, which according to policy 187 dictates that comments and concerns can be allowed at the regular meeting per month. And if we only have one regular meeting per month, which is the second Monday of the month, or the first meeting, that would be the meeting for the comment and concern section. Historically, when we only had one meeting per month as a district, everybody had a chance to speak to the board once per month. So in theory, there is nothing lost here by having comment and discussions allowed. The second meeting per month, as defined by approval of the full board in conjunction with the administration's desires, was to have the second meeting be more perfunctory, if you would, regarding the committee processes and anything that would spill over that we might have to address. So it was more of the exception. So again, I'm trying to align us with the policy. I'm also trying to align us with other districts that I solicited for feedback on how they address multiple meetings per month. And I'm finding that a standard in the area within Region 6 for CISA, as well as Region 8 for WASB, is if you have more than one meeting per month, you allow comments and concerns to be expressed in one meeting. I'm not opposed to it, discussing it, and I would like to support very much your request to have a discussion on March 10th. But to have something added for this evening would be a violation of 19.84, and it would be an add, not a correction. I would also add, before you have further comment, Prior to this meeting, I was approached by Mr. Smousel and the individuals here for the MRA presentation. Would it be appropriate, should anybody in the audience wish to ask any questions of this compensation committee process, be allowed to ask? Most definitely. There are educators in the room, there are support staff in the room, and anybody who's an employee of the district who has an interest in the possibility of us moving forward with the compensation program would be asked to participate as well. So I'd like to do it right. So I would definitely have it on for discussion for March 10th.
I'd like to address your points piece by piece.
Can I don't know that we want to do that. I think we've gone down this, I'm just advising the board that it's not on the agenda to talk about tonight,
If there's a reason it's not,
and that can come flushed out on March 10th. I understand you have a concern. I think Mr. Rentham said he's going to put it on the agenda for next time, right? So it's going to be on the agenda for next time. So then,
Which it should be, because that's the regular first meeting of the month.
And we
So
can talk about this.
that has to be.
well, that part will be on there, but there will be a special item, line item that will say,
Discuss.
what about having discussion at the second meeting of the month? If we continue to have second meetings of the month.
the point being
That's an
is,
interesting thing.
the second meeting of the month, the structure has been changed from a workshop to, as I stated, we have several approvals here with no voice from the community. That a real issue with that.
And I think that the community deserves the right to come and hear what you have to say, because it's not on this agenda. And I think the community deserves to have that put on the agenda for the 10th. And anybody that would like to come can then voice their opinion at that time.
And I also make a strong suggestion that based on tonight's attendance, that for that particular issue, which seems to be a hot topic, that we get that to the library, where we have enough space for people to see the company, which we brought up before.
So I'm hearing a second part that next month's meeting will be, the suggestion is to have it at the library at the high school. I don't see any problem with that. Does anybody on the board have a problem with that?
Good, because we're fresh out of chairs.
Okay. So you're back to,
Additional comment or discussion on the vote. Actually, we have a motion to approve as is, essentially. Any further comment? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no.
No.
Motion carries. Old business, as pointed out by Mr. Smousel, we are subject to discussion and/or action. First item on the agenda for old business is the MRA presentation, 35 minutes. I didn't get all your first names. Take it away.
Thank you. My name is Michelle Kianka. I'm with MRA, the Management Association, and these are my colleagues, Laura Prokop and Mary Abrahamian. And first and foremost, we'd like to thank you for having us here to present today and for your thoughtful approach in deciding whether or not to use an external consultant to assist with developing your compensation model. We know that this is new water for public schools to be going through, and we welcome the opportunity to be able to assist in this process. So, we thought we would start by, because this is new ground and new territory, part of the advantage of bringing in external consultants is, for a number of reasons. MRA has been around for 113 years. We're a not-for-profit employers association, and we've been working with organizations that are both private sector, public sector, nonprofit, healthcare, financial services, manufacturing, a whole variety of industries across the board. What we do in the area of compensation is something that lends itself well to schools as they're going through this process in developing a compensation model. We bring in the expertise of having years of experience in particularly the private sector in creating sustainable models that take into consideration performance and a number of different aspects that we know are under consideration and part of what you're looking to do. One of the other advantages is, developing a model like this is something that is a lot of work, and it's something that to add on top of the existing administrative staff's day-to-day workload is something that I don't think you want to to push on them because it really does add a whole level of new workload to their day-to-day efforts. And so just that extra pair of hands to really keep things moving along and kind of driving and championing that process to make sure the balls don't get dropped and the critical deadlines that you have do get met. You know, we're able to share some of the best practices that we've seen with other schools and other organizations and really bring some of those best practices to Kewaskum as we go through this process. Oh, thank you, Mary. Yes, in your folders, I think most of you found a copy of the presentation. And we would like to kind of run through the process today because we go through our approach. I think a lot of the questions that you already have in your minds that you brought to the table today, some of those will be addressed just through the overall approach that we're going to talk about today because it is kind of a unique approach. But we are going to have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. So thank you for holding those for now, and you feel free to write all over the sheets if you have questions that come up. But you know, I think the biggest advantage to having a third party, you know, be it us or be it another firm to come in and assist you with this, is that you know, throughout this process, there's an opportunity to really build and strengthen relationships between sort of all the different stakeholders, the teachers, the board, the community, the administration, and so because of our unbiased nature and our ability to help to weigh all the pros and cons of all the different stakeholders and what all the critical elements need to be as part of the plan, we can really help to build some of that credibility throughout the process too. So if you want to flip the page, again, MRA, as an employers association, we are a not-for-profit. We have members that join MRA, so we have about 4,000 companies that we work with throughout the Midwest. Just a little bit about our staff. We have a staff of about 250 professionals. Many of those seasoned HR professionals, many of those experts in just their particular area, such as Mary and Laura, who are specialists in the area of compensation and incentive planning. You know, one of this whole concept of developing teacher compensation models is really new ground for everybody. So MRA really got into this, you know, right around the changes of Act 10 and the needs that we've had from other organizations that have approached us to assist them in this process. So I think you'll learn throughout today that the tried and true process that we've used in the private sector has lent itself really well to working with some of the other districts as they go through some of the challenges and some of the discussions as we facilitate through the process. But we'd love to take the opportunity to go up that process, share some of the best practices and the challenges and you know, our recommendations as we move through it to really make it a smooth process that really takes all elements and all opinions and all considerations into the mix. And the other thing too, I think that you'll find with working with us, again, because we are a not-for-profit, is that even though we have a process that we follow, you'll find that we're very flexible throughout the process. So even though we might, you know, kind of state the whole approach up front, really ultimately through the process, if you decide to take certain aspects of it on yourself, or or it takes a turn and you want to do something a little bit different, we're going to be very flexible throughout the process in terms of sort of that, you know, we bill only for the hours that we use with an not to exceed in the proposal that we'll outline for you after today's discussion. Now what I'd like to do is introduce Mary and Laura, who again are the specialists in the area of compensation design, and let them kind of talk through the approach and the process that we suggest.
Mary, before we begin though, one of the things that I would want to touch upon on why, you know, MRA and the tried and true approach, but one of the things that we've heard from other school districts is that we don't want a cookie cutter approach, you know, or we don't want a cutter fit from other districts, and that's the key thing that I would like to highlight about our approach is that you'll see that it's very unique and tailored to what is right from Kewaskum, what's right for the culture here, from the environment, and you know all of the challenges that you guys face. I mean, it's a tried and true approach, but it's an approach that allows Kewaskum to be what it is, and really elevate that to the next level.
Great one. And I'll kind of build on what Laura said, and I'm Mary Abrahamian, and we just want to kind of remind you what Michelle touched on that. We're going to walk you through the process over the next 10, no more than 15 minutes, because we want to allow plenty of time for Q&A. But we think that a lot of the questions you might have will be answered as we walk you through. So if you don't mind, we appreciate your patience and bear with us. We'll try to go through it pretty quickly, but yet give you enough information that you have a feel for what our quote-unquote tried and true processes that Laura alluded to. So I know Michelle mentioned that we've already done a few other projects with other school districts in the state of Wisconsin. And as you know, it's a very new field. I mean, prior to Act 10, there really wasn't a whole lot to talk about with the previous 7-lane kind of being embedded. So it's sort of a brand new, brave new world, if you will. And as Michelle said, we've kind of taken the work that we've done in the private sector and used some of those best practices. Both Laura and I have worked for Fortune 200, Fortune 50 companies. We've taken what we've learned and we've applied it to the public sector and in particular school districts. And just a quick little story anecdote. One of the districts that we worked with as we were working through this initial process of fact-finding, they asked us point blank, can you share your model so we can get an idea of what we're headed toward and what we're going to see at the end? And Laura and I honestly said, no, we can't share our model because it's a journey. We're going to work through a process and we won't know what the end product is until we work through the steps. And that's the honest truth because, as Laura said, it's going to be a plan that's going to fit Kewaskum, the current culture, your current strategies, your goals, things that you're trying to accomplish. So we can't tell you what the end's going to be. However, we're going to walk you through the process. So this slide that we're on right now that says Project Roll talks a little bit about the facilitator. We just want to highlight that MRA would be specifically a facilitator. We're not here to dictate to you how you should pay your teachers or in what manner or how much. Our goal is to be able to work you through the steps to be able to uncover what that teacher compensation plan is going to look like. So that's really important for everyone to understand. Then the next slide, we want to tell you a little bit about what we call the foundation or the base that we're building before we can get into the nuts and bolts. One of the first things that we do is how do we make decisions? Now that sounds really simple, boring, not very exciting, but it's an absolute key step in any project. And I think Laura in particular, so many projects that you've done in the past, that can be what really holds up a project. And I think that builds on what Michelle said, that sometimes it's nice to have an outside third party. Number one, because we're unbiased. We don't have any previous notions. We don't know anything about the current staff. We don't bring in any baggage, if you will. But two, because we can walk you through this process and we can make sure that we're following things that we decided on early on. So if we decide this is how we make a decision, we're going to hold the team to that. And in some ways, I think it's easier for that outside third party to do that. Then the next step is we're going to look at what are your goals and objectives. We need that for several reasons. One, we're going to use that as we drive toward the goal, the end goal of developing the plan. But also, Laura and I are going to use those goals and objectives to measure ourselves at the end of the project. We're going to go back to that and say, did we hit the goals and objectives that we outlined in the beginning? That's the only way we will know that we've been successful in helping you achieve your goal. So that's a really important baseline step. Then we're going to go into the critical success factors, which every project that we work on, we come back to these success factors again and again. And if you end up contracting with MRA, and we'd love to work with you, this is something that is going to be embedded in your teachers, your principals, in the working team, the board. Everyone's going to really understand what those critical success factors are. Just to give you an example, a really common one that we hear is consistency. Easy to understand, something that is financially feasible. So in the beginning, we work with the Kewaskum project team, whoever is on that team, to scope out what is important, what are the critical success factors for the plan.
Those are our guiding principles as we think about the design of the model, what will the teachers look like. Those are what we're going to use as our guiding principles. And the only other point that I would touch upon in understanding the strategic goals and objectives of Kewaskum, at the end of the day, any compensation plan should help drive and support those. So you don't want to have any kind of disconnect, so it's very important for us to know right away what are some of the key things, key initiatives that the district is trying to accomplish. For example, to be able to attract the top quality teachers in their field. That might be one of those elements or one of your strategic goals. But if we look at all of that as part of those discussions.
Okay, then the last one on this building the foundation, these are the early steps of the process that we're describing, is what we refer to as total rewards. You can also call it total compensation. And it's basically referring to both pay and benefits together holistically. And the reason why we want to point this out is even though our expertise really lies in the development of compensation plans, we know that any decisions that might be made with respect to pay could very likely be impacted or impact the benefit side of the equation. So it's really important for us to understand what is your benefits philosophy along with your pay philosophy, and we look at that holistically as part of the project.
Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, both elements impact how much you get to put in your project.
So we realize there's a finite sum of money that, is part of the process here. So we have an eye to that, even though we may not have direct impact, we know that that's something that could impact what we're doing. Okay, then if you look at the next slide, it says project approach, and there are a couple of pictures here. One of the next steps is we look at what we call key stakeholder groups. I'm sure everyone on the board is familiar with the stakeholder term. For these projects, we work with Kewaskum to figure out who are the groups that could be impacted. Some of the obvious ones, obviously the teachers, the principals, the community, maybe even parents, students. All of these different stakeholder groups are identified. Then the next step is we map them. So by that we mean, let's just take the principal group, for example. We asked the project team the question, where are the principals today in relation to their comfort level or their feeling about addressing a teacher compensation plan and potentially doing something different, something new? Are they excited about it? Are they nervous? Where do they sit? And then we'll ask, where does that group need to be at the end of the project? Do they have to be excited about it? Can they be neutral? Is it okay if they're not feeling good about it? So we ask, where are they today? Where do they need to be at the end? And you can kind of see from the graphic here, that one at the bottom has an X and a 0. That arrow represents the gap. So that'll tell us, here's where that group sits today. Here's where they need to be at the end of the project. What are we going to do to help them get there? And from that gap, we'll develop an action plan. And so just to build on that example of the principals, let's say that the principal group is, not sure right now. We put them as neutral, but at the end, they need to be supportive of any kind of a plan that's implemented. Part of that action plan is going to be to involve them throughout the process. So that's just a really basic example, but we go through that with every stakeholder group. Our goal is throughout the whole process is to communicate. One thing that we shared with Jim in a previous meeting, we'll share with the board, I think is really important for you all to know. In the number of projects that we've completed so far, if there's one thing that we've learned and that we want to share with this group, is that you can't communicate often enough and early enough with these key stakeholder groups. So the sooner we can get in front of those groups, the better, and the more often, the better. And that all leads to that end result of trying to have them where we hope to have them, if it's supportive or neutral or what have you.
Yeah, I mean, really at the end of the day, it's what we ultimately want. It's a huge change. Let's face it, compensation, your paycheck, it's a very passionate issue and topic. So it's very important for us to get people engaged and help us figure this out. And so as you know, with any kind of getting to accept change is when you're involved, when you're part of the solution, you can more readily accept that change. You may not necessarily like it, but you can accept it.
So I know we're kind of running tight on time. We want to make sure we have plenty of time for Q&A. But one last thing about the stakeholders, we see this as a huge opportunity for not only the board, but the administration team, and the principals and the teachers to renew that communication and relationship building across the board. It's a really amazing opportunity. So we just want to point that out. Then the next page, the project approach, on the top is a picture of a man or a woman thinking. So that's to kind of give you a visual of the brainstorming piece of the project. What we do is we look at a number of different plans that have already been implemented at other school districts. Not just in Wisconsin, but we benchmark also districts outside of Wisconsin, like Colorado, Florida, Texas, etc. And what we do is we ask the project team to look at each plan using those critical success factors that we mentioned in the previous slide. And we ask you to think about Kewaskum. and then look at this plan. What works, what doesn't work when we think about those critical success factors. So we go through that step, and then basically, Laura and I will kind of distill that information and boil that down to some of the high-level feedback that we receive and start to work on options. But before anything is developed, we also have a step where it's kind of embedded in really each step of the process, and that's getting feedback from both the principal group and the teacher group. I mean, they're absolutely key. We not only want to inform them and educate, but we also would like to reach out to that group for feedback. They have amazing ideas in our experience so far with the projects that we've done. So this is all kind of boiling together to the bottom half of this slide, making decisions, where we're taking all of that information from the project team, from the teachers, from the principals. We're boiling that all down into a new plan or a couple of options for the team to respond to or react to. And then the last couple steps are sort of, detail-y, but absolutely critical, and that is the financial modeling. In projects we've worked on in the past, for those of you Excel buffs or the financial gurus on the board, we'll work with you and we'll develop an Excel spreadsheet that really helps you take whatever plan is in place and be able to adjust it every year as your budget changes. So we're not going to help you build a plan that 2 years from now you can't afford. Okay, then the next slide is the timeline. And just real high level, it sort of reiterates what we've said already, but the beginning stages, going through our early steps, getting feedback, months 3 and 4, continuing with the feedback. Months 5 and 6, we're starting to get into the development of the compensation model. And the last couple of months, we're starting to, really start to implement and think about the transition plan.
And I just want to highlight that during that timeline, it's not because we're spending 40 hours a week on site here. I mean, it's really, what we've learned through the process is that that's what it takes to be able to communicate as often as you need to build the internal support that you need to. It's really, the length of time is really more based on getting people to understand the changes, provide input into the changes, provide direction, and to, really kind of gain acceptance through the process so that everybody has had their chance to be heard and to see the results of what is coming.
And I would just add, as you can see, the last green highlighted chevron, if you will, we came from implement plan, and of course, during that time, we finalized the design, we finalized the modeling to understand the financial impact, but now we're gonna look at what's the people impact, and then what is the transition plan that we may have to develop in order to get to our end desired state, maybe it's multiple steps versus, doing it right away, right off the bat.
So that really concludes the presentation portion, and we really appreciate your patience in letting us get through all this material. I think we did it pretty quickly.
We can talk for hours on this.
Yeah, we could easily. We had to skinny 4 hours down to 15 minutes. So.
But we would love to hear your questions and answer those.
Before you get to questions, just a little bit more of a framework for everyone. The compensation committee met with MRA last Tuesday and voted to bring them forward to the full board, which was their charge in that committee. During that time, many of the same things were spoke and talked to. I believe in a nutshell, the conclusion of the last meeting was sustainability, and that the journey is just as important as the destination. It's an opportunity to build bridges, mend fences, and the biggest critical factor of this working is everybody's got to feel like their voice was heard and had input into this. Otherwise, no matter if you be the greatest system in the world, it's still not going to work. Anybody else from the compensation?
I would agree with that. I think that a good starting point would be what we started to discuss about in that meeting. We talked about sustainability, and I'm sure you still have notes from that, so we could probably take off from that benchmark for questions.
Yep.
Anybody?
What districts have you guys worked with or currently working on?
We've worked with Kewaskum School District and Howard Swanville, American Way, and most recently with Elm district in Waukesha.
And how is that going in the implementation with finance? I know that this is a newer model for many districts.
Yeah, it's a great question. We actually just had a call with Lucky, and they just implemented this year. It's a little early to tell because the first year, you're working off of your measurements and your goals that you set, and the pay isn't impacted until the following year. And it wouldn't be fair to impact pay before you had a chance to move the bar on it. So it's a little early to tell, but so far, it's going really well. And the teachers were so heavily involved that I think, everyone we talked to, they really understand the plan, buying into the plan, and that was a key goal from the start.
And some minor tweaks, and I think that's, something else to point out about MRA is that because we are an association in which you would belong to, the support doesn't go away. So, at the year end, if you want to do some modifications or you have additional questions, you have some ongoing support throughout the process. Really at any time you have questions about, oh gosh, we hired a new teacher, how do we put them into this system? Or, all those kinds of questions can be answered throughout the process as well.
Does Sue's question imply that you only have 3 districts in the state that you're working with right now?
That's correct.
Specifically around teacher
And that's within the last 12 months?
Correct.
So I've been relatively fresh.
Correct. So new, yeah. it's such
Okay,
a new deal.
I have a few more I jotted as you were talking. You emphasized the teacher ranks specifically. What about support staff, what about administration? Does your program cover comprehensively all employees of the district or just the educators?
What we're talking about today is specifically teacher compensation. However, we are able to support and help on the administrative side as well and have several of those. We do that a lot in the private sector. We actually even do about 2 dozen different wage and salary studies as it relates to more private sector administrative staff. Your maintenance staff would be part of that group. If you think of it as any positions that you might be recruiting from the local community where they don't necessarily need teacher certifications, licenses, things like that, would be benchmarked through some of our surveys, and we do that kind of compensation work all the time.
Can I
Please.
A vision would be that do it for the teachers, then we've learned how to do this process, and then we can do it with the support staff. So we gain that knowledge, and hopefully we wouldn't have to pay for that service again.
And the data is more readily out there.
Right. It's a little different process, a little bit more condensed, maybe not as traumatic. And once we learn from you, we could use you as a sounding board to try to do it ourselves with that group. I think that would be the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I think we have the capacity as a board and administrative team to work through that, whereas we're talking about pretty large group of employees.
Right.
You could do comprehensive approach, but in this particular case, it was requested that you just focus on one group so we would cut costs. Is that what I heard you say?
The goal has always been for the last year, even before they were there, to work on the salary compensation for teachers. And they've been separate since I can remember. That they couldn't be put together, but I think we've been talking about this salary compensation schedule for teachers since I can remember. And certainly we want to take it and use the same process. It makes a lot of logical sense. And we appreciate and support and hold on the same priority our support staff. Don't get me wrong, it's the same, but this allows us to do the same process.
And I think we can share that, most districts have looked at them as 2 separate elements. Some choose to do them together for various reasons, and some choose to do them separate.
Okay. Does your program focus on performance-based compensation?
We'll focus on how you lead us.
Can it?
Yeah, absolutely, yes, and it has in the past.
I think one of the things that's nice about it is they're gonna help us go to where we, as a district, wants to go.
Customized.
It's not, here's your cookie cutter, Kewaskum's gotta fit to this, it's, it's gotta be sustainable financially, that's a huge thing. Teacher input is another huge thing, it's how we wanna build it as we go, correct? It's not, this is our program, fill in the numbers, and that's where everybody falls.
timeline said 7 to 8 months, so that pretty much means that if we were to do something, we wouldn't be able to implement it until the next school year. We would be looking at 14, 15,
Exactly.
like the old CPI process for compensation, we would do something.
Unless for some reason, we found that the change of fees, everybody was on the same page and it was, very smooth, then, that can be condensed, but, we haven't found that to be true.
Okay, and I noticed on this survey item, you have some cost data here, and it makes this comment, member versus non-member costs. Is the notation that if you're a member, that's because we hired you to do the work, and there's still extra charges for some of these services?
There's with MRA there, we work with members and non-members alike. The member savings is about 30%, and membership fee for a project like this would just be included in the rate of the project.
Okay.
That would be that fee.
And that was something that was discussed with the insurance committee, that if tonight we are not looking for approval. We are going to put this on the March 10th agenda for approval at that time. The board has a couple of weeks to digest and ask further questions. We can open it up to the other people if they have questions before the people leave, after we get done. But the only other thing that I was going to say is that now I've lost it.
Real quick one. You commented about the attracting quality employee. In your experience, whether it's with the current tree in Wisconsin or outside Wisconsin with your business initiatives, how do you define that? How is it to achieve something like that? Is it? I want to answer. I won't try to answer. How did you achieve meeting the goal of attracting?
Well, one of the key things we have to think about is your market and your peer districts. So that would be something we talk about early on in the project, is help us understand who you compete with for talent. So when you have a vacancy for a teacher, what districts are you typically drawn from? Or, the flip side that we don't want to think about is what districts are coming after your excellent teachers. So we want to first get a feel for who those peer districts are, and then what are they paying their teachers? And that's going to help us understand where does Kewaskum have to be competitive and be able to keep your great teachers and attract great teachers. So that's why our sample statement talks about attract and retain.
I just keep going down.
Yeah, no,
Thank you
great
for
question.
answering.
Yeah,
Thank you
great
for
question.
answering.
I remember what I was going to say. Part of the reason why, and there was a question on the timeline, ultimately the board, we talked about wanting to have something for next year. With this timeline, it would get done in December. So at that time, you could conceivably still try to implement during the course of next school year, but more likely is that you will continue in the same CPI range in what you've done the last year to get this fully implemented for the next school year. And I don't know that there's any shame in that, because what we found out in the last 6 months that we didn't know a year or so ago when we had this ambitious timeline is that in the last 6 months, a lot of school districts from across the state are now struggling mightily with either sustainability or with some of the factors that they decided to implement without 100% buy-in from people. So we'd rather take a little bit more time and spend a little bit of money on the front end to get this right, so we don't spend a lot more time and a lot more money on the other end.
Don't you as a school board know what the competition is as to what other school districts are paying teachers? That we have to rely on these people?
We do know what the competition is paying. We have some good ideas. But there's also, you don't have the ability to compare an elementary teacher at Kewaskum Elementary versus an elementary teacher at Kewaskum. You got different class sizes, you got different background, you got different experience. And layering all those pieces together That's the real difficulty. Could we do the math and try to come up to an answer? I believe I could, but I also don't do this every day. I don't have the expertise in setting salaries for educators. So that's where it becomes a case of you want to do it right, because if you don't do it right, there's really severe implications to it. You could overspend, you could underspend and lose really talented people. So there's a lot at stake here. And I don't know what the teacher salary and benefit package is out of our $20 million budget, but if someone held a gun to my head, I gotta think the teacher portion alone is probably $12 million. Most of the person this year. That's a shot from the hip, but I don't think I'm off by a lot. So we're talking about a significant dollar and a significant risk, because there's the dollars at risk, and then there's the education of our kids at risk. This is a big deal. I'm pretty confident at most things, especially as doing math. This one's a little, it puts me in an uncomfortable place.
Anyone else?
What's really hard, I was gonna say, I just think what's really hard too is when you're talking compensation, that's such a soft subject, and nobody wants that tempered with, and certainly don't want it to go down. And other districts, of course, have been trying this, and some have heard of its difficulty with it, and they haven't heard of many success stories, so I think to bring the expertise in is wise on our part.
But we're also tying in evaluations in this. So that's the key. So you have to have what's fair in the classroom to that teacher, and how do you reward that? And how do you do that as a board out of the blue? I mean, how do we as a board come up with an idea of what the evaluation should be? It's hard to do.
Kind of touches on that whole journey part of this experience, that you want to get all the key stakeholders to the table and see what their priorities are. And obviously, one of the priorities is going to be, how do we tie performance into this? And that's where people have gotten caught in other districts, where a Ripon might say, well, we live in a college town, so a master's is really important to us. Where you can go to a Nina, and Nina will say, that's not important to us. Performance is important to us, so that's not important to us. And then Northland Pines is up north, and they have to attract teachers from a lot of different places and far away. So their emphasis might be on, rewarding people that come and move up to that area, so on and so forth. So that the transforming truth is that journey of what's important to the teachers versus what's important to the school board, what's important to the community, all those key stakeholders. And I guess you gotta get those people to the table and start flushing that out.
This isn't a question as much as it's a comment. What I see occurring is you mentioned wages and benefits. That's one thing that when I got on the board, that was something that I saw as an issue, because coming from the private sector, exclusively prior to this, I saw wages, so this big benefit number of $21,000 for a family health plan for a year. That seemed like a really, really big number. And I knew that I've been pulling my clients out for the past decade out of $150 deductibles into $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, $10,000. And I would say, see something like this coordinating with the insurance committee, where we're offering multiple programs, where there is a low deductible plan, a mid, high, and a high, so that you can really, as a employee of this district, custom tune your entire package to be what works for your family, your house. I know what I like, but that doesn't mean that everyone likes that. So I think there's going to be some coordination with how we develop this compensation structure to include the benefits, because it is the package. It's the whole thing.
Does anybody out there have any questions?
Sorry.
I do have a question for you. I heard you say something about not liking it, but accepting it. Did I hear that right?
Yep.
What would be the case where we wouldn't like it, but have to accept it?
Well, I would just use an example, like what if you don't want to have the student learning objectives as part of a measure, but at the end of the day, that's what we decide to do, so it's really at the end of the day, it's trying to say, here are some of the potential plan design elements, and taking into consideration everybody's feedback, and what are the goals and objectives of the district, it's balancing those out, you know, and so, but understanding your perspective and helping you get to the point of acceptance, and as to understanding why did the district select those. You know, it's
Or
really
another-
understanding the why.
Another example might be, you know, maybe collectively, they want to reward getting a national board certification, which I think is, you know, a great thing for schools, but they can't have everybody go and do it at the same time because they can't afford it financially. And so maybe they have to cap it at, you know, several people per year or something that like that. Again, looking at the strategic goals, if that's a goal, and one of the goals is financial stability, but the other goal is to reward people who go for a national board certification. Perhaps there's a give and a take with what that looks like.
Do you have brochures for us on the cheap seats to take over?
Probably.
Brochures for us on the cheap seats to take home.
What is it per hour, or how, you know, I know every client is different, but.
Well, as Michelle mentioned, we have kind of two different price structures for member organizations. So if you would join MRA, the hourly rate for compensation consulting is $150 an hour. $150. And if you were not a member of MRA, it's more like $190. I'll hold you to that exactly. I can just remember. So there's definitely a benefit to joining. I don't have the join figure off the top of my head, but for a project this size and scope, it would be a no-brainer to join, and it would reduce your costs so much that it would pay for itself. And then some this first year, and then, you know, we can show you the value of being a member.
And we'll outline all of that in the proposals that you have all that.
And you are a nonprofit.
Yeah, just the member savings alone, these things we're trying to put together. You're looking at from a member to a non-member for the same dollar value, just what you just said, 50 hours of additional time by being a member. So based on that fact, knowing that's more than a full work week, extended work week, I can see what you're saying.
Anyone else?
You had mentioned several times something about the existence, wanting to have the existence of critical success. How do you define that? How would your company feel they had been successful in this district doing the jobs?
The critical success factors we typically outline as a guidepost for us to be able to know that the plan that we're developing is working. So did everyone hear the question on the board? So that's kind of, the critical success factors are more about the plan itself.
Can you give some examples of critical success?
Yeah, so for example, that it's easy to understand. So if we build a plan that's extremely complicated and complex, Laura and I, at the end of the project, we're gonna ask the team, well, wait a minute, at the very beginning, we said as one of our critical success factors that it had to be simple, easy to understand, and now we've built this monster. So what are we gonna do here? So we won't necessarily dictate to you, we cannot have this plan. It's gonna be a back and forth discussion. What do we wanna do? Do we wanna go back and make some adjustments to our original thought? Or are we gonna stay true to our original ideas and say, this is not gonna work, it's too complicated? But then the other piece of your question was the goals and objectives, and that's what we, Laura and I, really look at for determining our success, and we're gonna look at overall, what are we trying to accomplish with the project? So for example, if we look at that total reward statement, and it's to attract and retain high-quality teachers, let's say, then we wanna make sure that a plan is developed that's gonna, you know, reach that goal, and that'll help us understand if we've met our goal. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
And those, just to clarify, those critical success factors are developed in conjunction with the project team. It's not something that just MRA solely develops on its own. It's done as a conjunction with whoever's on the project team.
Which would be probably some kind of a cross-functional team of some sort representing.
How many people are usually on a project team?
It really varies.
We have anywhere from 4 to 20.
Okay.
And it kind of goes back to your culture and what's happening at the district and what your needs are.
So that $150 an hour is for whether it's 4 or 20 people? It's not 100 for you and then 100. Okay, just want to clarify. That makes it, might be huge.
Can I ask if any of the
it's a really good question. We could just make one other point. One district that we're working with initially said, we more know what we don't want than what we want. So they gave us a list of things they did not want us to consider. And here we are a few months later, and now some of those things are coming back. And they're saying, you know, we said we didn't want that, well, now we want to look at it. So we would just encourage the team to be really open-minded to the extent that you can, and we'll do our best to try to lead you that path, but it's just amazing, things that you thought in the beginning, but once you work through the process, you realize, well, maybe that wasn't so bad.
But it goes through Jim's point of the journey, because they changed their perspective because of the feedback sessions that we held, because of the stakeholders analysis that we conducted, because of those exercises. They already had an assumption at the beginning of the project, and because of those exercises, they changed their perspective.
Province South Milwaukee is the closest thing they have. They have incorporated the old system into the new system. So if you go to the South Milwaukee website, you can get a copy of it.
Yeah.
And this,
Oh. Would all three of you be on it? Or are you?
it's mostly Laura and I.
Yep.
Okay.
It only involves some of the critical points.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question now?
Please.
And I don't know that you'll necessarily be able to answer this one, but it's just kind of a clarification on teacher viewpoint. Or I guess I'll just go with my viewpoint, I'm not gonna speak for all the teachers. When you talk about sustainability, I hear that what we have within our salary schedule right now is not sustainable as far as growth from year to year to year. So my question is, what you develop, do you kind of start on the left, I guess, and then go through the year and have your performance and your SLOs and all those be great, and then get bumped the next year back to the beginning? Or do you start from where you ended and then potentially grow from there?
You know, that's a great question, and you know, this is actually, we should probably clarify it earlier on, that there's really kind of two phases to the whole process. Independent of what teachers are currently being paid right now, the design of the compensation plan is laid out through all the discussions through the whole process. After the plan is designed, then phase two is, okay, so how do teachers currently align with that structure? And really, so it's really independent from what teachers are making right now. So it's not, we're all flying back to the beginning. It's really, okay, let's look at what model makes sense. And then from there, phase two is, okay, now let's look at where people are at. But, you know, I think, you know, again, going back to attention and retraction and retaining key employees, you know, there's gonna wanna be a, you know, minimal impact on teachers at some level. It's really about, again, when we say sustainability, it's not about current sustainability. It's about ongoing year after year after year sustainability based on the predictive modeling of performance evaluations and some of the other critical elements that are going to be talked about through the process.
It's like a well-built motor. If you put the motor together with the right tolerances and solid bearings and quality products, it'll continue to go. If you could patch something together and it might work for a little while, but at some point you're going to have something that's going to go to the scrapyard, and we don't want something that goes to the scrapyard in a couple of years.
Yeah, it could cost you twice as much.
And one of the things I think that I've heard loud and clear from around the district is how are we gonna get from the old step 1 to step 14 if we don't do lane and steps? There's gotta be some way that I'm gonna get rewarded across the system. And without that ability to get rewarded across the system, that doesn't do it for me as a teacher. So I think the key is, what's the priority for some people versus other people, and meshing that together, the journey again, and then flushing out what the priorities are, and having a model that is sustainable but yet allows teachers to grow and maximize their earning potential, just like it's been in the past.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
More to come.
And my business card is in there, so any questions that you have, feel free to reach out. And if anybody else wants any contact information, you know, we'll leave some extra packets, and feel free to pass our information along, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
So within a week, we'll have a proposal for our specific thing, so they can get it ahead of time, so they can approve it or not approve it at March 10th. Fair enough to the board?
Is it possible to teacher only and then teacher and support staff to incorporate both, receive both. How's that?
So we had that some additional conversation to get some of the other information that might need to be administrative.
We could talk to Jim offline. Is that something that we want to pursue or not?
I don't know that it's cost effective.
We don't know what the cost is, but you're right. We don't know.
I'm assuming it's not cost effective.
Right, right.
When we have a program that we're gonna study that's gonna cover 140 teachers, and we have administrative team of 10, and then we have support staff that is much more than teachers, and is even more related to fair market value. I think, again, looking at the investment, I wanna make sure I can invest and get a nice rate of return. I don't know if the rate of return is there, in my opinion, unless you think dramatically different than I.
My only comment would be that if you're going to go down that path, there's a lot of synergy that takes place in the discussions that makes it more cost effective to do them together versus separate. However, that's without any conversations with regards to that, so we're not necessarily what your goals and objectives will be with that.
We could talk to Jim
Yeah,
offline.
absolutely.
Get a little more information.
Are you asking because you want to keep it fair?
Well, I'm kind of asking, piggybacking off of what you were kind of hinting at before. I mean, while we're going through the process, why not ask the question? You know, if we can see a proposal up front to compare the two as a board and then make a decision, maybe that's good. I was kind of thinking along the same lines, there might be some things that are similar between the groups that we can piggyback on, and why not try to do that then?
You know, things like compensation philosophy and total reward philosophy, and a lot of those things are just considered.
I just think we need to do a cost comparison.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Now you
Yep, it's been an hour.
No flash plan.
Okay, thank you. More chairs, come on in. Item B, after the last meeting on the 10th, I contacted Mrs. Jasek, and ultimately it resulted in an email exchange between her and myself and Mr. Smossel. And I was trying to get my arms around the fact that we had gone through on the agenda 7 items to approve for minute activity for approval. And again, I'm going back to November 25th when we had the presentation from the council rep who indicated signatures would be required. And I was trying to get some structure around when you talk about approving minutes, when you actually have the signature process occur. And based on the packet of minutes I received this evening, it appears as though after the previous meeting, we're going to have the subsequent minutes presented for signature. So they won't really happen the night of the meeting process. It'll happen the next physical meeting.
It can happen at the same time.
It could?
We're just trying to catch up.
Okay, so perhaps maybe going forward, then we'll have it the same night if they're approved.
If we were, Jeannie should have dragged you down and make you sign last time. He's got it kind of away from it. So
Okay.
from now on, before you leave, if everything's copacetic, then make sure that you and Jeannie meet and sign off.
That's good. That's kind of what I was after, because
No reason to
after
drag
2
it
weeks,
off.
you might forget and you don't know what's going on. With that comes to mind the statute 120.15, paragraph 5, which speaks at basically the terminology for why you want to have signatures in the first place. And the way it reads is this, if I could just read it real quick. I'm not saying we should list the whole verbiage on the form, but it says something like, act as chairperson of school board meetings and see that minutes of the meetings are properly recorded, approved, and signed. And it goes into if there's absence conditions. But that's pretty much what the substance of 120.15 paragraph 5 is, and it applies to this, which also indicates a signature line. And I see on some of them you have a signature line, but not on all of them. So I'm wondering if we could, just for the sake of standard structure, have like you have minutes approved, well, yes, obviously, because I'm going to sign it, maybe we don't even need that part. Just if it's signed, it's approved, okay? But also maybe a reference to the statute that ties us to this whole process of what we're trying to do here. So It's a question. If the board has a comment on it, I'm basically asking for the minutes to show an approval line with reference of State Statute 120.15, paragraph 5 with the signature line. Does anybody have any comments or suggestions, questions? That's okay?
So is it- we can make a standard form and then put the minutes right on there?
Yes, sir. That's what I'm thinking. The template with the top and bottom and then everything in the middle would be variable, and you'd have something to trade off of. It'd be pretty simple, I think. That's just me.
Is the clerk gonna sign off on them, or does it designate on there who signs off on them?
Well, 120.15 talks as the chairperson, which would be the
Is-
president officer. And then,
Well,
and or the clerk.
You're in charge of making sure that they're approved. It doesn't say, we'll read it again, I didn't hear.
Act as chairperson of school board meetings and see that minutes of the meetings are properly recorded, approved, and signed. In the absence of the president, the vice president, or in the case of a three-member board and of school board member, shall act as chairperson of school board meetings. It doesn't even reference the clerk, but I wouldn't have a problem with any of the officers, to be honest with you.
I just was saying that because normally if Gene wasn't here, the clerk would be in charge of the minutes.
Yeah.
So that's the only reason that came to mind.
So, okay with the template?
Mary, could you send your minutes to me electronically so you don't have to retype them? That's why some of them don't have lines.
Okay.
And if I could just make a comment about having you sign the same night. If you will recall, at the last meeting, there were several changes made to
Yes.
several of the minutes. So if you sign them the same night, you're going to be signing minutes that aren't accurate.
Well, so the only ones we would sign would be the approved ones. Anything that has exception, we would push on to the next meeting. And I get that. This happens to be everything all at once because of the minutes.
But they are all
Yeah, correct.
accurate based on visuals.
Okay, that takes care of B1, B and B1. In light of the exchanges we had on the minutes approval in the last meeting, I left with two questions after the dust settled and we got excused. I presented a proposal for minute modification, minute enhancement for the December 12th meeting that was purely meant to be a proposal to the board. And yet, one of the comments I heard was people were concerned about some of the things I said, a couple of the words, which begged the question for me. If we're doing board business and we're sharing board business before it's approved and finalized, that was just, I didn't quite understand that. Nobody sees any of my stuff any day of the week, and I just wondered why that happened. So, any comment? Any statement about my proposal being out there when it should have been with 7 people?
Well, I call the question, we're already at 5 minutes on this topic. This is a December 12th issue, we're now 10 weeks past that. So I would move to go on to item C at this point.
Well, there is no question, but now there is a motion to move on. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion to discontinue comments on number 2 and number 3 by Mr. Hanson, a second by Mrs. Mary Miller. Comment or discussion?
I thought it was number 2. What about number 3?
He said go on to C. I'm assuming he meant to skip
Oh,
number 3
I'm
as
sorry.
well. Was that a correct assumption?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'm wondering why we got to skip these if they're on the agenda and discussion a little bit longer.
Well, we're almost done. I was basically just making a point. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. I just didn't think it was right to share information. But we have a motion on the table. And any further comment or discussion?
That is almost like actionable items, the way I see it, so.
Well, there's a discussion that I wanted to have. That's why I put it on there. I'm going to honor parliamentary procedure. He's got a motion on the table. Mr. Anderson's got a motion on the table, second by Mrs. Miller. Any comment or discussion about whether we should move on or not? All in favor?
Well, we could, I this before, why can't we discuss this?
The motion, your answer to the motion will say whether we move on or not. Either you say yes and we move on, or you say no and we don't move on. That's where we're at.
I say no.
Well, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. All opposed, please say no.
No.
No. No. No? All right. I was done with number 2. I made my point. I just want you guys to know that I was proposing and got blown up and that's not the way I work, I'm just surprised that's the way some do. Definition of excuse was also brought up. I would frankly tell everybody here and to the whole community, when we sign up for the job, I think they expect us to be here. If we have to leave, I think Sue said it, it doesn't matter if you have to go. If you have to go for whatever reason, it doesn't matter to me. All I would hope is that there would be, hey, I can't be there, or I have to leave early so that I can cover for that. But it's not up to me to excuse anybody, in my opinion. It's just not. If you want to go, you go. You go. Doesn't matter what the reason is. So to say you would like the minutes adjusted to allow for somebody to have an excuse to leave, I don't know how I want to
We're
deal
now
with that
8
going
minutes
forward.
into this discussion. I make a motion to move on to item C.
We already had that motion and it was denied.
Well, now we're on to a different section. We covered 2 now.
Yeah, but you did both at the same time.
My mistake. I should have done that.
Well, I think my view on this is the public, there's people in the public that question this. And so when somebody writes a letter to the editor complaining because somebody leaves for their child's event, and somebody else gets noted that they had to leave for a child event, what's fair for one is fair for all. So actually, family comes first. And so I think just to be clear in the minutes, that the person is excused. If they can't, they call to say, I can't make it, I have something going on, I have a work obligation, whatever. They're absent, but they're excused. They've notified the powers that be in the district, they can't be at the meeting, they have to leave for their children. That's what we're here for, is our families.
Okay.
So I do feel it's relevant to address if they're absent and if it's excused. They've notified people that they can't be there for a legitimate reason.
When you ran for office, though, you had the family, and you knew there was gonna be conflicting nights. So when you decided to pull your papers and to run, did you think about, okay, I wanna run, and this is why I like to have meetings Mondays, always Mondays, because everybody knows school board meetings are on Mondays. So if you have a lot of family planning, and I get it, and I understand it, and it conflicts with Mondays, you should think about that before you decide to pull your papers and say, well, I'm not gonna be there this night, because I got this, and this. Then go be a parent.
The reason my meeting, I was excused from those was because I told you guys if you change to 2 meetings a month, I'm going to have more potential conflicts. I told you, here's the
Correct.
situation, I'm a dad first before I became a school board member. I signed up for 1 Monday night a month. You changed that. You changed that in midstream. So at that point, I would expect some flexibility of the board from a person who works a ton of hours and has 4 kids.
I work a ton of hours, I have 4 kids. You were part of that agreement to change the night.
And I told you, when we agreed to that, here's my deal.
Right,
There would be
I told you
conflicts.
that.
right, and that's fine.
So now we're 10 minutes into this. For the
Going back
record.
to Neola, one of the things, have you gotten to any point in Neola discussions if there's any type of policy on board member stuff like that? I mean, is it something that could be brought up?
It states, the only thing that it needs to say, actually, is you have to meet once a month.
Right.
Because I'm alluding to the idea of excused. Ultimately, from that perspective, I'm guessing it's gonna end up being something that would be locally specific to us.
What we're having a meeting Friday,
Maybe you could ask some questions about
software that
that.
could be used.
And also, just thinking ahead here too, going back to the annual meeting, I believe that it was about our pay, as far as getting paid per, as long as you weren't excused, as long as it wasn't an unexcused absence. we say
No,
that
it's
way.
1 meeting a month. That's what the
Well-
public decided.
So regardless, if you could just kind of examine that as well, to see how that.
I think we're way outside of the agenda topic, which was definition of excuse. So I propose we move on to C because we're off agenda, which is a violation of open meetings law.
I will close the discussion at this point by simply saying I'm uncomfortable using the word excuse. It's not my choice to excuse. The choice is made to come or not, and that's it. So I don't know, I want to say excuse anymore. I'm just saying, I don't think it's right for.
And I'm just saying that at the annual meeting, I believe that term was used. So that's, I'm just saying we need to make sure that we're listening to what they have asked for. That's it.
We'll continue
Can I-
now.
I don't even, I guess I look at excuses like, the proper protocol and reporting them into Ramthun. Because is, I guess I look at it as schedules do change, and when we did go to 2, I did have some conflicts with that as well, and I stated that. But, you know, personal things come up, family is first. My kids' schedules are constantly changing with sports and extracurricular activities and scheduling, and I have a career as well, so I just think we just need to be respectful and cognizant of those things. Everybody's lives are different.
We don't need policy, we need common sense. Next.
So what we will do, based on what you said, Heather, is we will go back to the annual meeting and take a look and see exactly what the verbiage is, so we make sure that we follow that. Other than that, I've heard that Tim said that he's not, this group isn't supposed to excuse anybody. You do what you need to do. You signed up for this, you need to do what you do, and one should not be critical of another for whatever reason. And I guess the other thing is, if you could tell me in 1 or 2 sentences, the question about sharing board information, I guess I didn't get the point. So I don't know what we're supposed to do with that.
There were people outside the board
You
audience.
kind of combine the two together, so.
My proposal was an expression to the board, and it didn't stay with the board. And I just think that if we're doing board business, it's still with the board, that's all. That's all.
Item C, please.
Sorry. But we can move on.
Through January 20th, 2014 special meeting minutes. That would be the full session items. I don't have the special session ones that they approved at the last meeting. I got signed.
They didn't get signed, but they approved it.
Okay. So I need to catch those for signature at the next meeting. Yeah, or tonight. No, it's not. Okay, anyway, the one I have for approval tonight is the closed session item. Sorry, Jeannie, I don't have the special session for the 20th. I don't have it. Had it in order.
Okay, I've made notes.
We have time, correct? We can push it till the 10th? Or do you want me to
Yes, Mr.
swing by?
Stansel.
I'll swing by and sign them on the way out.
Okay.
I'll do that.
So-
Okay.
So we're looking for a motion for these, right? For C?
You have it online, right? I just wanted to do it.
Yeah, we're within 45 days. We can do it on the 10th.
But we have the minutes online, right? We can look at them.
We got 'em.
So at least we can approve it. I'll just sign it when I leave.
Do you have did you get them in your board packet?
They are, I'm looking at them electronically as we speak.
So you do have them?
Yes, they were in the board
So you
packet.
can approve them?
Yes.
I would just
Okay.
say that, I noticed that there isn't it notes that we're getting back into open session, but didn't note that we adjourned, so minor.
That would be a separate, those are separate minutes for the open session.
Oh, that's what.
Yeah. Mhm.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion to approve the January 20th special session minutes by myself, a second by Mr. Hanson. Comment or discussion? No changes necessary, right?
I did make some changes to it.
With the changes,
I
then.
yeah,
I amend
right,
my
right.
motion to include the changes with this. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. Item C done. Approved school perceptions, 20 minutes.
I don't think we need 20 minutes. I didn't know if Bill was planning on coming back. He's in another district tonight. So basically, you have the proposal. You've had it for the last couple of weeks. What your pleasure is.
Can you just tie the time frame in with the vision? Got a topic.
The suggestion that I put forward to the board is that you utilize the visionary committee timeframe to use the school perception survey. In other words, part of the school perception survey is to find out what the community wants. And they have community input, so you have to have a meeting. So that makes sense on March 18th to have a community meeting to get community input on what the survey should look like and the questions that they would like to see asked. So that night would be for that purpose. So it would be a very valuable, right in line with what we've been trying to do. And it takes him about 8 to 12 weeks to do the survey. So then the June meeting would be about the time frame for him to come back and share the results with everybody.
I have the exact proposal in front of me, but I think I can go off of memory. I think we talked about $8,300 for this.
Yes.
And that's 2 surveys?
The strategy, phase 1 strategy development survey design is $3,200. Phase 2 is survey, actually giving the survey out, $2,600. Online results, access, written report, plan of action is $2,500.
My concern with this is that we had a facilitator come in and do our strategic planning, and I didn't see a ton of results from the money that we spent, frankly. And so I have concerns that we're gonna see true results and being able to use the data that's collected to make that $8,300 worth it. When budgets are so tight, I haven't, and let me just say, I am the first person advocating for community to be involved and for community feedback. First one, cheerleader all the way. But, I have concerns from a financial perspective on this.
I do also.
Well, the visionary committee was not effective as it was. It was not the results that we had hoped for with the strategic plan. It did not turn out to be.
So then what do you do? Next question.
Maybe to have an unbiased survey with all the people in the community, because it was a very limited people that participated in the visionary, very limited.
That's my question, is that
No.
if this didn't work out the way you want to do, we still want to get the feedback from everybody.
More people, lots more people.
And I'm not saying, I'm just saying, what do we do if we don't do this?
Except
One
what's
thing
the
that
other
we're
choice?
working on too is, I emailed Vicki and Carmen to Jim tonight, and with 5 or 6 questions that are gonna go out to the committee members for visionary, and just asking ways of partnering up with the community. So, maybe that's the piece we use going forward as our plan of action. And because you're right, Heather, data results are great, but it's what you do with them that really matter. So.
And it didn't cover enough, it didn't cover a wide enough scope. We had a first meeting in September, which was the first meeting. We don't know about it, the word isn't really out. And then we had a horrible weather night, the second evening. And I think that was very unfortunate, because I think that really limited our scope. We need a much wider scope if we're gonna get accurate data. We can't take a really tiny sampling and get any sort of accuracy. I don't wanna spend the money either. From what I've heard, thank goodness we didn't make up 2 school days that saved $10,000 a day. So is that the way to spend $8,300 is the question that the board needs to address. To have someone with this guy's background, experience, the way he presented the data, I think we then would acquire $8,300 worth of data. I'm not sure what we've spent to date between strategic planning and visionary committee. If I was to shoot from the hip again, $3,000, $4,000, and we got very little return. This is a proven, maybe it should have gone this way from the get-go, but I don't think we knew of this program maybe at that point in time. So you make a mistake and you move on to get accurate data. So based on that fact, from the presentation, I have faith that we would get what we need out of this to function correctly as a district. Because if we're not delivering what the community really feels they need, we're failing the district. So it may take some investment to do that. As tight as I am with cash as well, we may have to do this to get what we really need to do the right thing with our $20 million budget.
There's no doubt in my mind as well. The information that can be collected, the data that can be collected can be very valuable to us. I'm not as confident in our ability to take $8,300 worth of data and digest it and implement strategic plans from that. It's the next step that I'm concerned about, and making that $8,300 worth it. So,
I think there's a confidence factor there. I have great confidence in our administrative team to help us with that process, because we definitely need them. But again, they've got the background, we don't. And I feel like I'm pretty good with data myself, but we won't stand. So I think we can, anyone who's not feeling comfortable with it, I'd be willing to help and be a leader in reading that data.
Then we have to do something with it.
Which falls back to not us, because even on a busy month with 2 meetings a month, that's where Mr. Smazzo and the administrative team has to work with the educators to then deliver. Now, if they don't deliver, just like we hired them, we can remove them from their positions. So that's not a threat, that's just simply the hierarchy of how it works. Is if we spend the money to garner the data, to then have the information to implement a plan, and either nothing is done or a core plan is implemented, well, someone's responsible for that. It's not us, thank goodness, because we're simply board members. So then comes the day-to-day operations of the school, but there's a lot of pressure to that. There's also some reward to that. This is one of those cases where we would really see what sort of power we have in our administrative team and strength by being able to implement the results of this in a constructive format that would help the kids learn and make the community feel like they were part of the process.
And part of the survey, isn't that to determine what the climate of the community is, what the community wants, what they want for our district, for everything? Because there's quite a variance of viewpoints.
So, yeah, to answer your question, we have a specialist who's going to run the operations of the survey and gather the data. We have a community that hope will participate in very strong force in that. We have a piece of the puzzle as our 7 of us to review and look at the data, but we're not the implementation process that would fall to our staff, from Jim to administration to educators on down the line. That's how I see the process in as much detail as I can understand it.
we'll be getting that data back in June.
That would be the plan.
Also, Jim, could you say, at the next visionary committee meeting, this is where the public is involved with, that was your goal, at the next visionary committee meeting too?
I would suggest.
Margaret would not be there, but.
Right. I would suggest that Bill would be there, and he would not only ask the visionary, but like we did last time, anybody that wanted to come, no different than the last meeting, anyone that wanted to participate, we invited to come into the last 2 meetings. So this is not any different than we've done in the past. So we gave a special invitation to the ones that showed up, the 20 people that showed up, but we also said that anybody that wanted to come was more than welcome to come.
Maybe it's something to be put in the newspaper, alerting the whole community.
Correct.
Not only on a website, because parents go on the website. I know there are other individuals that do, but in order to get a broad scope from the community, to put something in paper.
If I could, I've been here a year and a half. Most of the board members, except for 2 of them, have been on the board for less than 3 years. And I can only speak for myself, but when I started approximately 2 years ago investigating the district, there was this sense of, we need to find a direction. We need to find out what we prioritize. We need to find out how we're going to improve the district. And we started over the last year and a half trying to do that with strategic planning, with visionary, with changing some things up to see if we could be more efficient and effective. I'm proud of these people that are sitting at this table and in this community for trying to find out how to best meet the needs of our students in the 21st century and not necessarily looking back into the 20th century. This, to me, out of a $24 million budget, to spend $8,300 is probably the best bang for the buck you're going to do. I don't want to spend $8,300 unless I absolutely have to. But this is a proven success. He lists the 6 major strengths. It seems to be a very cost-efficient. He puts in a lot of time and effort. It's a turnkey operation. that in June, you should have an opportunity to decide, this is what this community values. It should lead us into goal setting for the next year. That in and of itself is worth $8,300 to me. Now, I also agree with you, Jim and Heather, to a certain extent. If we're just gonna do this and spend the money and not do anything with it, then forget it. But I don't think that we can afford to do that. I think we have to start setting some goals. We have to be data-driven. We have to have what this community wants to move forward. We can't just keep on shooting in the dark. So I look at it as a very positive, fantastic, enthusiastic opportunity to get 25% return, which is, you know, we're at 1% right now. So we're gonna garner 24% more people giving us their opinions.
You know,
I think that's why we brought them forward.
at the leadership meeting that we had last August down at Cedar Valley, I saw a really inspired, motivated group of people in that room. We could have that same meeting this next year with hopefully something already in place based on the June data, and maybe that would be our benchmark, is what can we do by that leadership meeting in August? We're kind of measuring how was last year, what's all the off-season work that we did to prepare for a grade 14-15. So if we need to put that sort of piece, if I need to make a motion to approve school perceptions with a implementation plan and progress report at the August leadership meeting, I guess I make that motion, because I think that does give us some measurement, give us some responsibility and some accountability to what are we gonna do with $8,300 worth of data. In a time prior to a new school year, we hope that we can actually see some action in the 14-15 school year. So I would make the motion, I'm sorry, Gene, if I need to repeat that or outline it or bullet point it, I'm happy to.
Give me one word. I have approved school perceptions with blank at August leadership meeting.
With,
Can we say summer? I'd like to do it before August.
great, with a progress and implementation plan at the summer leadership meeting.
Got it.
Monitoring by Sue. Or just put monitoring. Well, I think that goes with the implementation and the process, obviously monitoring the other process, but.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Hanson, with the qualifier stated, second by Mrs. Miller. Comment or discussion?
I would just ask Jim, since getting on the board, I've realized now and have a better appreciation than I ever have for how much work is actually being implemented during the summer months. Is this going to be too much of an extra burden on our administration at that time frame? Is that too aggressive?
No, because we need to, at this summer meeting, roll out to you what the more or less a 3-year plan is and how we're gonna move forward on everything. And this has to be part of that. Whatever feedback we get, this is what our community values. It has to be in our plan for next year. So I think it fits right in line. If we're gonna do it, with the caveat, if you're gonna do it, this fits right in line with it.
And I would think the other thing that may loosen this up is if we do impart MRAs to take care of the salary structure, the amount of administrative hours that would have gone into developing that, I don't know how to guess what that number would be. But I would think it would be hundreds of hours of our administrative team to do that versus implement this. So that might be the free up of the time structure.
Where do we leave the 22 people that gave of themselves the desire to come and help be part of the vision committee process? We had 2 meetings, September, December. We have another one on March 18th. Move to the day, right? What happened to them? What happens between now and March 18th?
You and Sue said that you're gonna put together some questions from the last board meeting, and Sue sent them to me earlier this evening, so we will ask and survey those 22 people between now and March 15th.
Can I see the questions?
I can forward them over to you as well. I sent them to Vicki and to Jim. But when I did research on this, and really to make this, to work, it has to be a partnership both ways between the school district as well as in the community. And, whether it's a district inviting, the community and businesses to events and vice versa. And it's gotta be effort and proactive and to really, to make it work, having that partnership.
So we have a motion to approve the perceptions, but we still haven't gotten feedback from the 22. It almost sounds like, this is just me, I could be wrong, it doesn't matter what they say to our questions because we've already made a decision on Golden School perceptions, so why even participate in answering? What I'm trying to ask is I would really like to exhaust their opinion for this process. I go back to the initial discussions of value and purpose. There is something strong about working with the community to get information out and get some feedback on, get some partnerships built. And it never grabbed hold. And I don't know if it was because of the structure of those meetings, the first two meetings. I mean, we walked into I walked into the first meeting and I was told what to do and where to sit and how to act. And I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't feel dynamic enough to me, it doesn't feel creative enough to me. How is it going to feel to the people if we're sitting there like this and we can't talk? So maybe that's why it kind of didn't take off real well, because we didn't enable it to. And maybe if we asked the people who are giving of themselves in their time, what do you want to see different from what you learned in the last two meetings? Maybe that in conjunction with the questions would give us an answer to how to move forward without putting the cart ahead of the horse.
There were some responses from the survey that went out. Well, how many responses? 6, 8?
Six.
Something like that.
Commented about,
People responded
and the
back
board was
for the survey.
I love resorting to math. Because we can all understand it, we're great math teachers. We have, Jim, how many, 1,950 students, 1,900 students?
1907.
1907. If we got 1% of the parents involved, we'd have 19. We got 22. So if we're potentially leaving behind, if you consider that most people have 2 parents. No, I'm joking. We're talking about 0.5% of the parents that we're quote unquote leaving behind. And I don't want to leave those people, we're giving them a survey as an exit, I guess potentially an exit survey, to 0.5% of our parents. That doesn't touch any of the community members, that's just the parents.
But Troy,
So
how
we
many of
can't
those
touch
people
everybody.
there that participated in the visionary committee are actually current parents of kids in the school district?
I'd venture to guess that.
I thought less.
Well,
But-
Okay.
can I just interject right here, is that,
That's
7 or 8 out of 22, okay.
can I just say that it's real easy to look in the rearview mirror and to point fingers and lay blame for how come it didn't work or this didn't work. All I'm trying to say is that we're trying to look forward. We're trying to do some vision, goal setting. In my opinion, humble opinion, by the way, is when we started this whole thing with the strategic planning a year and a half ago, it was we value this community. We have this process in place where we have lay people on these committees. We value the input from the people. And this is, to me, the first time that I have seen in a year and a half of being here, a tool that may be able to do this for us. So I say once again, I don't know, looking backwards, if that's going to do us any good. There's a lot of moving parts to why it didn't work or did work. Kudos to us for even trying. So I'm not interested in looking backwards and playing the blame game. So either if you're not going to use these results, or if you're not going to invest into the process, I 100% agree, then don't approve it. Because that's part of what the Vision Committee problem was, because we didn't invest ourselves in it. So, it's there.
Why don't we wait till the next board meeting, contact the people who are participating in the visionary committee with these questions, pose what we want to do and take it from there. Why do we have to approve it right tonight? I think 2 weeks is
We're gonna have to do something with the visionary committee on the 18th.
Well, can we make the people that are there part of?
Yes, absolutely.
Everyone's
You're
gonna
supposed to
be-
be.
That's exactly what the whole thing was, to not only
So
invite
it's not like,
them.
To
so if
develop
we
the
approve
survey
this,
questions.
it's not like your opinion doesn't matter.
Right.
You just bring them in onto this.
Yeah,
next platform.
absolutely.
The
That's
survey
exactly
should
what
help
it is.
develop the survey questions to go out.
It's been 22 minutes. I've got a motion on the table. I call the question.
Call the question as a prior to motion. It has to be acted upon. Did you second the call?
I had seconded his original motion.
Okay, the motion to call the question, so, all in favor of calling the question, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, please say no. No. Discussion continues. I would like, just to make sure I hear this right, we've got 22 plus people out there that are kind of in limbo right now. Yes? They're kind of in limbo right now.
I would say that that's probably accurate, because we've been kicking this thing around for a few weeks.
Could we, and I suggest this, could we take these 2 items, this D and this E, actually, the division and school, they're all together, okay? Could we take that as part of the agenda for the 18th and have the people work with that as agenda points to bring the closure to fruition? Instead of coming in with something already told?
So we don't know what's gonna happen on the 18th until we get done with these happening. So people are gonna have a 1-week notice for these vision committee meeting, whether it's gonna happen or not. How do you think that attendance is gonna go? Just putting that out there.
But if I'm hearing you correctly, I think that's what the thought was, maybe I'm not saying it right, is that the visionary committee members will get a special invitation and still come on the 18th and be part of this. Part of what the whole thing that they were trying to do from the get-go was to give us feedback on how to perceive our vision for the future. Here's an opportunity, this is the agenda for that meeting, is to put together a survey that's going to, we have not found a tool or an opportunity to get better input from the community than this. So they are a huge part of developing the survey, along with anybody else that wants to come that night, which is the same way we ran the last 2 meetings. So it's no different than what we've done before. We're actually doing what we said we were gonna do with this survey. So, yeah, I agree with you. It kills 2 birds with 1 stone. It's exactly what this whole group was destined to do since the strategic planning, October of 12. And I think it fits right in.
But doesn't perceptions null and void the vision committee?
It's part of the vision committee, because the vision committee was, how do you want the community to move forward? So we, without going into great detail, there was a committee that was put together between the board and administration of how to try to get that information out. And limited success in December. So here's a different way to get the same information out. It's the same thing that we've been trying to do for the last year and a half. I don't see it being any different.
So if we go with school perceptions, what do we need a chairperson for?
We don't. It kills 2 birds with 1 stone. That's why it's always been put after this. Unless you want a chairperson, you can have a chairperson, and they can sit down, and the committee can sit down, again, with Bill, or the board as a whole can sit down with Bill as well. There's gonna be more than 1 meeting. The meeting on the 18th is one of 3 that we would like to
Before we've
have.
got so much on the plate, why would you want to, as a chairperson, we could sit down and digest as a whole board, the information that we gather. You know what I'm saying? As a whole, because I don't think the report's going to be more than half hour of what we gathered and the questions we have, with the input from the other ones also.
I've seen is we need to get a lot more people involved in the district.
Just because we're going to be a mass crack mailing.
Mass survey.
Mass survey.
Right.
To everybody's doorstep, more or less.
25% of the parents of volunteers. That's huge number. It's almost 1,000. We have 22.
What did you say this percentage? 25% responded.
So 3,800 parents, roughly 1,000.
Well, you're not gonna get all, I mean, there are gonna be other people obviously that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, we're talking, this is the small end of the scale. This is not counting any general community participation at all. So we're very conservative with these numbers.
The question that Heather and I have is, when you went to vision, now we got 83 we're spending. We gotta do something with this.
And now I put as part of my motion some accountability to it. So I don't know what else we can do other than what the motion said.
This is testing. You remember the vision committee?
Yes.
How do you feel about school perception? Do you think it's a good idea? Do you think we should go in that direction and absolve the current vision committee structure, or do you think
We're not absolving it.
well,
We're enhancing it.
Somewhat.
You're
We're giving them a whole
enhancing
bunch of help.
it. You're enhancing it.
Well, I think your survey that you're going to have will help with this, you know, combination, and it also will help with your MRA group too.
so that's basically one of the members saying that they're okay with school perceptions coming in and uninformed.
It's like 4%.
Well, if you want another one, I was part of the visionary committee, and I don't have a problem with the survey, especially if it's adjunctive to the community meetings and if the community's still going to have input. I agree that the process wasn't perfect, but that doesn't mean we have to just throw the whole thing away, maybe tweak a couple things and move forward, but
And you still have,
I think anytime we have an opportunity to ask more people for their opinion, they can choose not to give their opinion, but you'll probably get a lot more people that will fill out a survey than will come to a meeting. It's hard to come to a meeting.
yeah, anybody else from the vision committee since started something here?
I was part of the visionary committee, and I think people that were at the last committee meeting might agree that it was kind of a mess, unfortunately. And I think everybody wants a good design with this. I think community input is so important. And when you only have 22 people that are able and willing to get to a meeting, you do not have a good sampling. And I think unfortunately, of that 22 people, it was a very divided group. Politically, I think those people would agree with me that were there. Even if we all fall on different sides of the politics, I think we would agree, unfortunately, it was a very politically divided group, which again, if we're gonna do something with community input, we have got to look without our political eyes. And a survey, I believe, will help do that versus 22 people who all have very strong opinions in one room. A sampling of 1,000 versus 22, I don't think there's any question, that is basic math. And I think in order to really get buy-in from the community, you are going to have to reach more people, and 22 is not reaching enough people. I was very disappointed with the last visionary committee meeting. As a matter of fact, I believe that I wrote a letter to administration stating that if this was the way that the committee meetings were going to continue to run, I would no longer devote my time to that because I just didn't feel that it was something that was going to be productive in any way, shape, or form. It had turned into political fights, which is not what I was there for. And I think there are many other people that would agree with me that couldn't get there, that we don't want political garbage messing up the community's input as to what we feel is right for our kids. And if you have the opportunity and if you have the money to survey a larger group, I think it is important that you include people that are unable to attend these meetings. This is a major, major time sacrifice for all of us to get here tonight. We all have children, friends, homes, etc., that we would rather be at right now. That's a fact. But for the people that truly cannot get there, we cannot discard their voice, their opinion. People truly cannot get to a visionary committee meeting or to a board meeting. They still need to be heard. I see this on social media all the time. There are people out there that can't get here. that need to be heard, that need to have a voice, and I really think that moving forward, you don't have to, totally dissolve the committee, but moving forward in a more open, productive fashion that includes more people is a positive step. How can that be a negative step to include more of your community? It can't be a negative.
I would add what better way to respect the people who've been on the visionary committee than to ask them their input in creating the survey. I think that's what I heard Mr. Snozzle say. I mean, what better way to say, you've been here, you've committed your time, help us create the survey, what should we be asking the community about? That's a respectful task.
And I think also, without a doubt, that having a survey of a larger audience is going to give us more information. How, 22 people is not a cross-section of the community. And I would think that's what you're hoping for if you're trying to get a vision for what the community wants, what the parents want, what the school district should look like. Unless you can come up with a way to get 25% of the people in the community at a meeting, which seems very unlikely, it seems like a better way to gather information, more information.
And I think that this way people get their questions answered better than they do with this committee at the visionary committee. They'll have the survey in front, they'll be stating what they want to see in the community, and their voices will be heard more so than was at the visionary. Some people did not get their questions answered, that's what they were there for.
Julie had her hand up or something. I gather there's no more discussion, but I'm glad we had the extended expressions. Thank you for your input, all of you. Motions on the table for approval. Roll call vote, please.
Mrs. Edelhoffen? Yes. Mrs. Mary Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Leister?
Yes.
Mrs. Sue Miller? Yes. Mr. Hanson?
Yes.
Mrs. Griezmann?
Yes.
Mr. Randall?
Yes. And that move negates the need for 20 care people. So we'll move on to new business, recorded school board meetings, Mrs. Tracy.
I thought, I don't even have to talk, I gotta go now, I think that's great, I don't know where that's going, so we
Is
get it
that
on our
going? I mean, who
website?
did that?
I don't know.
It's mine.
We'll keep it, we might wanna have it posted on our website. Well, I'm not gonna take up a lot of time, but, I think it's a great idea for the school board meetings, and, I know we had tried it once before, and we had it on cable, I don't know the exact circumstances that were there, but it was too expensive. But if we could possibly have our, well, now we're without two IT people also, I don't know what's happening with that. But even a high school to come in and take the meetings, they could upload it on our website. I think it's great to do them for the public, but like you were stating, not everybody can come to a meeting. They just don't have time. They could see it and look at it, not that night, whenever they have time to do it. And I think it would be a great thing. I'm still going to be checking around. I did check with Germantown, Brian Medford, had said that they have one of their full-time tech people at the high school do the recording and uploading to their website. It usually gets up to the site within a week. He's not sure what the cost is, but he was gonna get back to me. And just what their process is. They also have it broadcast on a local cable, which I don't see that we have to do that. Because I think that's where our expense came in, that was so expensive. But I think it's a great, great idea. And at the next board meeting, I'll try and have more information for you of the school districts that do record their board meetings.
What about Robin's suggestion with like some of the kids taking turns from government or law or whatever to
Oh,
put it on
absolutely.
YouTube or whatever?
If they're
There's no
capable-
cost.
If they're capable of doing it, it's a great idea. And
I bet the young lady in white tights could probably handle it.
Yeah, so at the next board meeting, I'll have a little more information what other school districts are doing. Robin, your idea was great, you know, I think it's great.
Getting it on the website though was key, right? Isn't that
Yes.
part of it? Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Could I ask where this taping is going to?
Gonna hang on to it in case we can put it on the website?
Yes, I will hang on to it.
All right.
And if it were posted, it would have gone on YouTube.
Oh.
Someplace it could go for free. So it would be available.
I think it would be, real important to have it on our website for the whole community.
Well, the website could just have a link to the YouTube.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep. So perhaps at the March 10th meeting, we can have some formalization on how we're gonna physically do that.
Right,
Who's
I'll
gonna
try and
upload it to
find
the
out
site,
more
get all that
information
typed
if
up.
anybody else has any ideas, if they want to look into it or whatever.
Okay.
But we'll have more information.
Thanks, Grace. The item B, Wayne info, which the SOR stands for Sex Offender Registry. There was a presentation at Wayne Elementary School. The short of it is, and you've seen this in various media, prints as well as I believe on TV and radio. There's an individual being moved into the Wayne municipality on March 11th, and I went to see what the sheriff's office had to present, and everything they talked about was not confidential, so nothing I'm saying tonight is extreme to any sort of privacy, other than the fact that the individual is going to be housed roughly 2 miles away or less, just a little bit under 2 miles from the school. And so several parents approached me at the conclusion of the meeting, and not the lady who was meeting was one of them, and they were concerned about the proximity and what the district would need to do, or perhaps consider doing, just to make sure. I don't really know the answer to the question, but I did promise the individuals who approached me that I would present it to the district and to the board as something to think about, to possibly look into as early as March 10th as well, because the individuals will be moving into the area March 11th, and school runs until the first week of June or so. So we'll want to do something, but I don't know what something is yet. So
I agree, Tim. I think education is key here. Information which Dale Schmidt and the Washington County Sheriffs took care of, as they are the legal enforcers in most of our jurisdiction here. But we all can go online and look at the map that I'm looking at next to my wife that shows that we have 3 registered sex offenders within about a quarter mile of where we're all sitting right now.
How many?
3.
It's online.
If you go to watchdog.com,
That's
you'll find, I mean, it's insane.
Farmington there.
You could just put in sex offenders and the zip code.
So I think it's a matter of, getting this sort of information out there too, that this is a fact. Looks like within less than a mile of Campbellsport Elementary, middle school, high school, there's 4. And I'm missing part of the map. So I think having the information out there and making our children aware of these sort of things, yeah, it's critical. And I think Washington County is the best ones to give us that information.
There's extenuating circumstances with any one of these things, and again, with the philosophy of looking forward instead of looking backward, I have a meeting scheduled with Sheriff Dale Schmidt tomorrow morning at 11:30, and he had asked, and the communication wasn't as good as we wished it would have been. He had asked us to sit tight and let them do the explanation of the situation at the Thursday night meeting, and then partner with them afterwards on that. I apologize to anybody and everybody that didn't get that communicated correctly. We were just trying to be the good stewards and open the doors and turn on the lights for them to tell us what it was and the long-range plan that he put together. Now that that's been taken care of, we will make sure that we certainly work with him as best as we can with not only this situation, but any other situation, Troy, that you just said, and that will start tomorrow. And I will keep you updated on what he tells me and what our role should be as we move forward.
I would just like to say, I was there too, and I thought the sheriff did an excellent job in his communication with the people that were there, and there were a lot of people there. He didn't have to do it because there aren't any warrants out for this gentleman. But,
He's not a criminal.
yeah.
Extenuating circumstances.
Yeah.
Beyond belief.
Falling through the cracks.
Which also kind of goes to the sex registry end of things here. This particular gentleman doesn't show up on the sex offender registry. And so this was kind of it was a different nut to crack, I guess, for our sheriff, and I could not agree more. Our Washington County Sheriff's Department did a bang up job
Yes.
of bringing in people and being wholeheartedly transparent.
Yes.
Making sure people knew what the plan was moving forward and things like that. And this guy is considered to be pretty dangerous, so it's one of those things where you should sit up and take notice and just make your kids aware kind of thing. The Sheriff's Department, my understanding is that they're planning on doing kind of a walkthrough, I believe, with Heidi and kind of looking at the security end of things here too, just to make sure that, they are really looking to partner up. It's a really positive thing.
Extra patrols around the area.
Yes.
And working with the staff that will be located in that home.
So is it okay if I share with Dale tomorrow that at the board meeting tonight that it's complimentary to this?
Huge.
And that we look forward to partnering with them? Okay, thank you.
Okay, we talked about the WPKV interview at the last meeting. I thought I would throw on the item for this meeting because it was good, and I was wondering if everybody had a chance to hear it. If not, take a listen. Comments or discussion?
I didn't hear it. I was
Okay.
out of state.
Take some time next time you're. All right, item C. One of the things I heard in the meeting when Mr. Bonifant asked us about the candidate forum, Mr. Hanson had commented on what he was looking forward to, and I actually felt in the dark. I mean, I got an email on February 4th that there was thoughts of maybe having something heads up, nothing since, and so I thought we would bring it up tonight. And then later this afternoon, Mr. Keel forwarded this item to kind of give a snapshot of what he thought would take place. Okay, so now it's 2 hours. Is that what I'm seeing? As I did 6 to 7 on the website for the school district. Now it's 6 to 8, 6 to 9. 3 hours, okay. All right. So this is the, and you said on your voicemail today that you're still planning and nothing's concrete yet?
I haven't talked to John Trumbull about it yet.
So he's going to inaugurate it? How are the questions created? How are they?
We're asking people to email us or Facebook, just email, drop them off in our office. There will be a component if there's time to ask questions.
And anyone and everyone can ask questions. Now, how are they picked, sorted,
It's going
selected?
to depend on how much time we have, how many we probably have, of that nature.
Do you have a notice in the paper as far as letting the community know this warrant is taking place?
Not just that, so notice in the other area papers, other area papers as well.
But did you have one of these dates in there? That's
In this weekend.
okay. Yeah.
Appreciate you taking all the time and effort for that.
Yes, Gene, you may want to post a notice that there may be a quorum.
That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Probably.
All right, thanks for the additional information. If there's any further comments or whatever.
That's next Monday.
Yeah, we'll come to it. So you don't have much time to fine tune. All right. Okay, reports, superintendent report, Mr. Slaughter.
In your packet, you received a letter, as well as I did, to the Wisconsin Indian Education Association, and it was in your packet. And if you have any questions, you can ask me about it at your leisure. And my other update is on the technology department. Last week, Julie Thorson and I probably have spent, I believe we thought we spent about 65 to 70 hours on this between the two of us thus far. We have interviewed 4 vendors from the outside: Heartland Business Solutions, K-12 Technology, DishaCorp, and CISA 6 also has a technology department. We sat down with each one of them and gave them a 3-year agenda timeline of the things that we thought we maybe want to do as far as technology is concerned, based on what was left with us with our 2 previous IT people, as what their goals were and their agenda for the next 3 years was. And we used that as a starting point with all 4 of these companies, and they gave us their opinions on that plan and what they would want to do. We also last week posted the position for the infrastructure systems person on weekend, and that will run through, I believe, March 15th approximately, Jeannie, correct? 14th. So we're kind of seeing what's out there, and we're also seeing the vendors at the same time. I will tell you that Julie and I both have taken this as an opportunity to learn a lot more about technology and internet, how it gets put into school districts. So, we're looking at this as an opportunity and not necessarily an anchor around our neck. So what we are doing this week is all 4 vendors are taking a look underneath the hood. So tomorrow we have, I believe, DishaCorp. Wednesday is K-12 Technology. Thursday is CISA 6. Heartland's been here, kind of been our go-to person here because they are who we had a relationship with before, to more of an extent as an outside vendor up until this point. I heard the board's voice that they wanted more than one vendor to take a look at it, so now we have 4. We also wanted to post it to see what was out there. So at the end of this week, we'll have, hopefully next week, we will have 4 different proposals before the March 10th board meeting of what they think we should do with our technology. And I'll tell you, it's really interesting. It's really an interesting journey that we've gone down so far. So I'll be DishaCorp,
CISA 6, Heartland, and what was it?
K-12 Technology Solutions. So the goal is to have their proposals to us, along with an idea on March 10th of how many people have signed up and are wanting to possibly be that infrastructure systems person. Compare and contrast with you the positives and negatives with doing outside vendor work versus hiring somebody as the lone person in your IT department, because there is positives and negatives both ways of doing it. And it's been, I'm totally honest with you, it's been an eye-opening experience. It's been a great growth experience for both Julie and I. It's been a wonderful opportunity to see what's out there. I kind of know what a B switch versus a cam switch is and all this kind of stuff. That's something I wouldn't have imagined a month ago, knowing the difference between the two. So it's been good. And you know what? Ultimately, the goal is, and I'm very confident that we're going to be able to achieve the goal, is we're going to have a good darn system for our kids and for our district moving forward. We're not going to slip. We're going to keep moving forward, and we're going to have as good a system in place as that we could imagine. So I'm very positive about the experience and very thankful for Julie Thorson for walking me through it. It's been a good partnership with her, and it's been a pretty eye-opening experience.
Compensation Committee, Mr. Hanson. I guess a couple of things to cover. Old news is the support staff did accept our offer It's been ongoing, those issues going well. That's been resolved. We got, and then we had the meeting last Monday with MRA to discuss the teacher salary structure. Obviously, we all saw that tonight. Those are the two largest items on the compensation issue. Any questions?
We have MRI, or MIA, tonight, sorry.
MRA.
Are we gonna look at 2 other vendors to give us 3?
As far as I understand, they don't really have a lot of competition in the area. I don't know where we go to get a second or third.
You know what I'm saying? We always usually get 3. And I agree with you, I don't think anybody's at this level, but I don't know if we want to try to look at 3.
I'd be more than happy to see what else is out there and see what the price is.
I would appreciate that.
If it's not in the same ballpark, then we can keep moving forward. If it's in the same ballpark, then I would ask that the compensation committee gets back together again to interview them. But it's my understanding that maybe one other company that is doing this. Starts with a B. Yeah.
No,
I believe they're working with Campbell Sport. And I believe it's a very watered down version that,
Well, I only ask that for 2 reasons. Number one is it follows our policy. Number one. Number two is if you make this decision with just them in the room, you're hoping it's a good decision. If you got somebody prepared to, you can honestly see that. I'm happy with them and I like the meetings we've had with them, but I think we should at least see if there's somebody out there to compare them to.
I will do that.
If we gotta come in, we gotta come in.
I will be more than happy to do that.
All right. Insurance committee, Mrs. Simone?
We actually have a plan of action in place. Currently, the eligible staff are filling out the insurance surveys, and we should have those back in approximately about a week. AFG, Associated Financial Group, they are bidding out the insurance. We should have those results at the end of, or towards the end of next month. The co-op that we're currently in, they're also putting out their plan. And nice thing is we can compare what AFG provides for the bidding versus what co-op is providing. And then in our April board meeting, we can decide on the direction that we'll go with the health insurance. So it's a big deal. Thanks to Julie, Jim, and the insurance committee for a lot of work on that.
You haven't reduced our data, right, the co-op?
No.
I just,
It's July 13th.
yeah.
Yeah, what Jim is talking about is we would like to have our claims data information because it would help us in the bidding process. And the co-op is unwilling to release that to us, so.
I thought they'd never been to it.
30 days after you leave the co-op, they will provide you with the claims experience. And I think there's one thing I would mention is that claims experience can be good and it can be not good. So it might be a blessing that we didn't get the claims experience. So I think we don't want to be held hostage moving forward.
If we get it after 30 days, could we use that for the next year if it helps us?
Yes.
You shake your head no. He
Yeah.
says yeah.
You can, but it's just like, well, is your doctor gonna read your blood work from 11 months ago?
Right,
or
I
from-
did that.
Right.
I'm just looking for.
Well,
it won't
the only
happen.
thing that we're gonna find out in July is if we made, if we should have picked door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3, and to see if we made the prices right.
There you
Or
go.
let's make a deal, or whatever else is out there.
To insurance.
Yeah. So it could help us, and it could have hurt us, so.
Do we have to provide that information then at that point to wherever we go to? Unless we want to? Can
Correct.
we provide it if it's?
Yep.
But how do you know?
Beneficial?
You don't know.
It's ours.
They're the ones that measure if
It's ours.
If you give it to them, it's bad, it's too late, then they're gonna check it. So,
And it fluctuates from year to year a lot.
Yes, you may.
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Leister at 8:10 PM sharp, second by Mrs. Mary Miller. Comment or discussion? All in favor, say aye. We're adjourned.
I know.